Welcome to this episode where we're going to be talking about the $2 trillion stimulus package that's just been put in place by the government. We're going to look first at some macroeconomic theory behind why you would do a fiscal stimulus package in the first place and some of the concepts behind that. And then we're going to look specifically at what's in this package. It's the largest package in U.S. history, and there's a lot of stuff in there, and we're going to talk about it. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Joshua Roberts, and you're watching Lawyer Up. While you're watching today, if you learned something, hit that like button. If you know somebody else that might appreciate the information, share it. And if you want to know more, hit subscribe. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about is how the government operates when we have a normal economy. Now, when things are going good, we have the Republicans on one side and the Democrats on the other, and the typical tug of war that goes on between them. Now, as a general rule, Democrats want to expand programs, and so they want to increase spending. Well, when it's government, the way you increase spending is you increase your income, which is usually done by increasing taxes. Now, on the other side, we have Republicans, and they're pulling in the other direction. They usually want to lower taxes. The effect of that is to lower spending and constrict these types of federal programs. Now, I'm not here to say which one is right or which one is wrong. I don't want to get into political discussions about these issues. We're just looking at the macroeconomics that usually create the friction that we see with our Congress, and this is under a normal economy. So what happens when the economy is not doing good and kind of goes into the toilet, like what we're seeing now with the coronavirus? We have a government that is trying to prevent a recession or to prevent a depression. What kind of an economic theory makes sense in that type of a situation? Now, recall what we just talked about. As the increase in spending goes up, traditionally the increase in taxes goes up. As the decrease in taxing goes down, the decrease in spending also follows suit. When we have a recession or a depression type economy, the macroeconomics change, and both parties have adopted what is referred to as a Keynesian model. What the Keynesian model recommends is that we do both. And when I say both, I mean increase spending and decrease taxes. It's a different type of economic model that you don't see under a traditional economy. And it's not a sustainable model. You can't continue to increase spending and lower taxes forever, but it is a good way to kickstart an economy. And that is exactly what the government's trying to do with the current $2 trillion stimulus package. And it has worked. It's worked before. Back in 2008 and 2009, we had a recession. They moved into a Keynesian model type of a stimulus package. Now, granted, it was less than $1 trillion, and we're over $2 trillion here, but it worked to fuel the economy and to let it get out of its recession at that time. One thing that Republicans and Democrats do agree on is this Keynesian type model to try to jumpstart the economy to pull us out of the recession. Now, this is, for you supply and demand people, demand side economics, with the idea of stimulating the aggregate demand in the economy. So the Achilles heel, or the problem with this model, is if we send out all of these stimulus checks and people don't spend the money, because it requires people to spend the money that they get to fuel the economy. This is why we don't do something like this when the economy is good. If everybody's at home, they've got money, they're fat and happy, if the government sends them a check, they're just going to take it and they're going to stick it in their savings account. That doesn't fuel the economy, which is why this type of a stimulus package or economic model only works when the society as a whole is by and large going to have to take that money and spend it or re-inject it into the economy, fueling the system. So now that we know the economics behind the stimulus package, let's look at the particulars of this particular package to see what's included. The first component is the small business loan protection component. It's about $350 billion that's been set aside for small businesses. Now, they're defined as businesses with 500 or fewer employees. A lot of these loans that are designated are forgivable loans, or essentially grants to these businesses if these businesses maintain the employees that they have. Now you'll have to demonstrate that you didn't cut employees and that you maintained the same amount of employees. But if you can demonstrate that, these loans convert to grants and they are 100% forgivable, which means you won't have to pay them back. It's a significant benefit for small businesses. Also, fees are being waived. No personal guarantees are being required. No collateral is being required. So these are very beneficial to small businesses in the United States. A second area of increase in benefits is in unemployment benefits. The stimulus package increases the scope in which unemployment is available. It's now available to people who didn't previously qualify, including people who have been moved from full-time to part-time employment. The amount of the benefits you can receive under unemployment has gone up. The duration, or the period of time in which you can draw unemployment, has been expanded from 26 to 39 weeks. This stimulus bill also affects the way you can interact with your retirement account. No longer is the 10% penalty if you borrow against or withdraw from your retirement account. It allows you up to 2 to 3 years to pay that money back without penalty. There's also an employer payroll tax deferral program which allows you to defer as a small employer up to 50% of the employment taxes or the payroll taxes that would be due the government. You can defer half of that to next year or even 2 years out. Another component is a massive amount of money going into health care. It's going into payment of benefits for individuals who need health coverage and Medicare and Medicaid coverage. It's going to expand research and development into the virus and vaccines. It's also going to go to critical medical supplies, protective equipment, and medications to treat coronavirus patients. That's $130 billion of this package. Another section of the stimulus package is what they're calling an economic stabilization component. And essentially this is the big business loans. These are businesses with 500 or more employees. And the types of loans being offered to these businesses is massive, for one. But these are not forgivable loans. Most of these loans come with a lot of strings attached. They have to be repaid. And one of the biggest areas of these loans is the airline bailout. Passenger airlines are going to receive $25 billion to help them recover from the economic problems caused by the coronavirus and the lack of not only domestic but international travel. $150 billion is being given to state and local governments in a block grant, which will allow them freedoms to deal with various coronavirus issues they're facing in the local community. And last but not least, what everybody wants to know about, and that is, when do I get my government check and how much is going to be in it? Probably the most popular component of this stimulus package is the check that's coming your way. Now the government, they say this is a tax rebate, but from your perspective, it's money in your hands. Not everyone is going to get this benefit from the government, but they state it will benefit 94% of the adult population. And the particulars, and I'll just read this, it says the coronavirus stimulus plan creates a $1,200 per taxpayer benefit, $500 per child. The amount of the rebate is gradually reduced for incomes above $75,000 per individual and $150,000 for joint filers. And it also phases out at $100,000 for an individual or $200,000 for a married couple. If you have income in excess of that, there won't be any type of a tax rebate or a check coming your way. Otherwise, for individuals making in excess of $75,000 a year up to $100,000 a year, for every $100 that you make, the rebate decreases by $5. So you'll be able to somewhat calculate the amount of money you're getting if you fall in this range. So that's it. That is basically the summary of the $2 trillion historic stimulus package. And to recap, we have small business loans that are forgivable in some instances and become grants. Great for small businesses. We have an expansion of unemployment compensation. We have the ability to borrow from our retirement plans, albeit a bad time to do so because of the stock market, but you can borrow from your retirement plans and pay it back over the next 2 years without the 10% penalty. There's an increase in funding for health care. There are the big business loan and bailout component of this, as well as significant funds going to state and local governments so that they can fight the virus. That's all for this episode. Hit that like button if you learned something, share this amongst your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.
Send lawyers, guns, and money. Dad, get me out of this.